Hiring the wrong marketing agency could destroy your pest control business. Most owners are dropping between $3,000 and $10,000 a month on marketing, ultimately end up with ghosted leads, confusing reports, and years of wasted budget. In today's video, we're going to talk about red flags when it comes to hiring marketing agencies. Whether it's an SEO agency or a general marketing agency, what should you be looking for as a pest control business owner when it comes to hiring a marketing agency? Things like contracts, you own your assets. These are the type of things we're going to cover in today's video. And ultimately, again, making sure you don't hire the wrong agency and then in 6 months, 12 months, you're just stuck trying to get out of a bad deal. Anyway, my name is Shane Dutka, head of SEO and director of operations at Pesty. With me is Rachel Kent. How's it going, Rachel?
Hi, everyone. I just started here about a week ago, and I was really inspired for this to be the first podcast and video that we make. The reason being, I've now watched hundreds of discovery calls and sales calls, and there were a couple, things that just really didn't sit right with me on the business owner's end of them being blindsided, taken advantage of. And I know from being where I sit in a marketing seat and working with business owners all the time that there's two things that business owners hate the most, and that's wasted time and wasted money. And so we couldn't fit them all in one video, I will say.
I know we wanted to have 20 red flags, but really we had to boil it down to 5. And yeah, I mean, again, when it comes to hiring a pest control marketing agency for your pest control business, an agency, whether they specialize in pest control or not, you should really be aware of questions to ask that agency before you sign on the dotted line effectively. And that's, again, the purpose of this video is to just highlight those things. Again, whether you decide to work with us, which we hope you do, or any other agency, the takeaway, you'll have a number of takeaways from this video, at least a checklist to make sure that when the next marketing agency you hire, you don't fall prey to these things. So yeah, I think we should just get into the first red flag here, which I have on my list, and you flagged appropriately, which is pest control companies not owning their website assets. And this is something that we see quite a bit with other agencies that basically build stuff on behalf of the client, and then as a way to retain them, they basically make it so that you can't leave, right? You don't own your asset. So if you want to leave, it's very painful. It's a pretty common, again, retention tactic to make it so that pest control companies just can't get out of the relationship. And it's a little bit predatory, but it's pretty effective, which is why people do it. Pesty doesn't do it, but if you are in the process of deciding to work with a marketing agency or not, and they're going to build you a new website or really create any kind of assets, it's really important that you understand, do I own this? Can I leave this relationship with this asset and that sort of thing? Anything you'd add there, Rachel? I know you were listening to a bunch of discovery calls this week and last week. What kind of caught your ear related to this red flag?
Yeah, this is actually the first one that I heard, and I made sure to include in here because when I heard it on discovery call, my stomach just dropped for them. Yeah. It just feels so wrong to not be able to own your assets. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would imagine that this isn't something that's brought up on the sales call when they're showing you their glamour shots. You don't get to keep your website if you leave. Yeah. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately what happens is they'll kind of show them a bunch of awesome looking websites. They'll paint this awesome story about how it's going to grow their lead volume. And then of course they're not going to talk about ownership rights unless it's brought up, right? Unless the business owner is savvy enough to be like, so do I own this or not? And often there'll just be so many more other things to talk about during the sales conversation. It'll just be forgotten about, and then it'll be baked into the contract. And again, if the business owner isn't aware enough about that stipulation, they might just forget to even ask. And then they've signed a contract, and then 3 months later, wait a second, do I actually own this thing or not?
Well, hopefully that first one is empowering some pest control business owners right now to ask these questions up front. And I know how long these websites take, and it just doesn't really feel like a move a partner would do. So that's
another kind of. Yeah, building on this one for a quick second, we just onboarded a client last week who basically told us every agency they worked with wanted to rebuild their website. They were asking me why. They're like, why does every agency want to rebuild my website? This is sort of dovetails with you don't own your website or assets, which is why I'm bringing it up. But it's a retention tactic, right? If the agency you're with has built your website, you're less likely to leave them. Also, I mean, most agencies will have a very strong perspective on how a website should look from a marketing perspective, which is why you get a lot of that. It's kind of partly for us as well. We just know it converts. So you'll often find that agencies will push for that. And then again, in some cases, they'll just make it so that if you leave, you lose the website. So just make sure you ask. And it's not just website, pictures, videos, anything they produce for you, make sure you own it and just make sure it's covered in the contract. So first red flag.
Yeah, that's a good point. First red flag. Okay. The second red flag is that they obsess over leads rather than lead quality or book jobs or revenue. So getting into that one.
Yeah, this is another one that we hear a lot of companies who are working with agencies and they're saying, oh my God, look at all these leads we're generating for you. Aren't you happy? And ultimately it comes, the way I think about lead gen, for pest control and broadly for home services, really any business, it comes down to sales, right? And not more specifically booked jobs, because if you drive 100 leads for me and none of them convert, I don't care that you've driven 100 leads for me, right? That's ultimately the end of the day. And some companies will basically resell leads over and over again. I know Home Advisor does this. What happens is Home Advisor, if you buy leads from Home Advisor, they actually sell shared leads. So if you buy a lead from Home Advisor, they'll charge you maybe $50 for it, but they're selling it to 4 different people. So really, you got 4 different people or 3 different people calling that lead at the same time. So the quality is very low. What you really want is exclusive leads that are first-party generated, not third-party generated. And what I mean by that is when a company buys a lead from someone else who had bought a lead from someone else. So like someone has generated a lead, say they ran an ad on Facebook or they're like running, they have SEO and they're generating leads. Somebody filled out a form somewhere. That lead then gets passed to someone else who bought it from them. And then maybe they sell it again or they sell it again to someone else down the chain. So it gets passed along multiple times. And ultimately, if you end up calling that lead and it has gone through that chain, then the original form they filled out to become in this, get into this like experience, they forget. And then the quality just deteriorates. We see a lot with agencies who are generating leads and they don't focus on book jobs ultimately. And it's the thing about, I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but I have a lot of thoughts.
Go on your tangent.
The agency needs to orient themselves and create reporting structures and a feedback loop that can basically just work with the market, the company to understand out of the CRM, what leads are generating what jobs, how much are those jobs worth? Are we generating a bunch of fruit fly jobs or just low quality pest jobs? Or are they like general pest control subscription jobs? What channels are generating those leads? Can we do more in those channels? That's the type of focus you need your agency to be thinking about. And they have to give good answers around that. And if they don't, again, and if they're just thinking about raw lead volume, then you're talking to the wrong agency. Anything you'd add on that, Rachel?
Yeah, no, that was great. I think the only thing I would add is, this one for me came up pretty quickly within the first couple days of me being here. Leads for Pesty on these discovery calls saying things like, yeah, I've been with so-and-so for, 3, 4, 5 months. I think there was someone that had been with them a little closer to a year. And it was, we got you this many leads. We got you this many leads. They weren't seeing the results of those things. And it's like, but where's the revenue? Where's the book jobs? I'm like, well, we got you this many leads, so we did our job, And so it's it's kind of like painting this perfect picture of we got you this, but it feels more like giving you like a bag of Monopoly money, and you open the bag and you're like, this isn't right.
It's not real money.
It's not real money.
It's vanity money. You brought up, as you were talking, I had an idea that popped into my head. The other thing I wanted to say, though, is blending lead sources, and that kind of gets us into red flag number 3. What'll happen is, there's actually 2 things that happen here. First is, I've seen, and I know you flagged this too, but agencies will blend the leads they generate with the leads that would have been generated anyway from the business. So this is a big thing that we hear a lot from companies. It's like, hey, I hired this agency, they're generating me leads, but how many leads would I have gotten if I did not hire them in the first place, right? So you're looking for that incremental difference. It's like, because the agency was here, because I was paying them money, they were able to generate some incremental amount of volume that I would have gotten anyway. That number is not always available to the pest control company because the marketing agency does not want to share it, because then that may paint them in a bad light. So that brings us to red flag number 3, which is you can't tie results back to campaigns. I know what are your thoughts on this one, Rachel?
I think it's just like another predatory move. It kind of makes me feel the same feelings as we're going to keep your assets in your website, our first red flag. It feels like you are manipulating results. And, if you are in digital marketing and you can't tell me where your leads came from, that is a huge problem. You need to know the sources in which you've generated leads from. And furthermore, if you don't, how could you know what campaigns were working and not working? And to just say, yes, we were running campaigns, but also, here's all the other leads that came in. They could have seen your truck. They could have, seen some of the community, maybe sponsorships that you've done. And they're just saying, we did this for you. It's just the person that takes credit for everything and is sneaky and hides it. And I just think it's just not cool.
Yeah. Yeah, you brought up a couple good points there. I want to hit on, make sure we talk about attribution is not easy. So from a marketing perspective, it requires tech. It requires being organized with your data. And, frankly, a lot of marketing companies aren't that organized with these things. And pest control companies are trying to do pest control, right? They're trying to grow their business. At the end of the day, if they're bringing in a marketing agency, that's part of the value prop is like they're bringing that experience, the expertise. Like, how should I set up my data pipeline? How do I get attribution in a way that I feel good about? That is really what you should be looking for in a marketing partner, is somebody who can advise you on the best way to do attribution. Yeah, like you're saying, how do you know which campaigns are working? How do you know which ones aren't working? How do you know where to put your dollars to get the best ROI, the best ROAS, whatever it is? How we do things at Pesty, we typically use a platform called CallRail. CallRail tracks form completes, it tracks calls. It's has a call rotation mechanism. So we know, depending on where this person was in our ecosystem, it'll rotate numbers and we can track which numbers they call. On offline stuff, we can create dedicated phone numbers that can live on a truck, that can live on a postcard, that can live on a door hanger, something like that. And ultimately, which channels are generating revenue. And then, thinking full funnel here, those leads will then flow into the CRM. We can see which of those leads turn into sales. If you're doing your job, and this is what we like to do, is we like to pipe that sales data back into the Google Ads platform, so that if you're running Google Ads, we can optimize our Google Ads campaigns based on sale data, not like lead data. Because this is another thing, we don't have it as a red flag here, but it kind of fits into this one, is that pest control companies, they don't, a lot of them come to us and they're like, oh, we're running Google Ads, we haven't really been able to make it work. And I asked them, like, what's your data feedback loop look like? Oh, what's that? It's like you need that, because Google has no way of bidding. You need to optimize Google's bidding with its algorithm, and unless you have a really strong data feedback loop that's piping in sale data from here are leads that converted into sales. Here's how much those sales were worth. Right now it's winter as we're recording this. If we're trying to get more wildlife leads or wildlife jobs, you have to pipe in those converted customers into back into the ads platform for those campaigns. So marketing agencies who don't set this up, don't have a perspective on it, don't think about it, don't ask the right questions during the discovery process with you is all a red flag. So I think I'll just leave it there.
Yeah. And I would say too, just to add on to that, it really kind of our red flag number 2, or our second red flag, which was the, being very lead focused and lead driven. We got you all these leads. If you're on a discovery call, if you're listening and you're a pest control business owner, ask the questions of attribution. How do you track this? Do you measure lead quality? Everything that Shane just mentioned, make sure to poke holes in their strategy and ask that question, because they know if they do or don't. So it should be a simple yes or a no. And if it's a yes, then I would ask how. That's definitely what I would do. So red flag number 4 is they're applying a one-size-fits-all strategy. I think this red flag for me came up probably the most with the issues that the business owners were having with their current agency. And I heard the term cookie cutter approach so many times. So
yeah, I do like cookies. I'll start with that, chocolate chip in particular. Yeah, when it comes to marketing, especially pest control, HVAC, plumbing, every industry has nuances, and every industry has little quirks and things, and the way that customers articulate their problems are different. And if you, as a marketing agency, try to, ultimately to scale anything, you have to have systems and process and duplicate a playbook multiple times over, which is why a one-size-fits-all strategies happen, is because in order to scale, not in order to grow agencies, in order to grow a business, you have to be able to replicate what you do for one client across 100 clients. It's just the only way it's going to work. Now, what you have is these generic agencies that come in that are multi-vertical, like your Coal Marshes of the world. And what happens is you have that they have to create a playbook that can fit into plumbing, into pest control, into HVAC, into lawn care. And that creates this one-size-fits-all strategy that then is presented to the pest control company, in our industry. And they're like, okay, I get it. Like the copywriting, the conversion elements, how are those different from me versus what you do for lawn care? Oh, I guarantee you they're going to be relatively similar, because there's no way they have to be bespoke. Otherwise it won't work for their business model. So yeah, that's something we hear a lot from clients. Like, hey, they applied a one-size-fits-all strategy to my business and I don't like that. I want something more specific to me. And unique, and every single client that comes through our doors, we have multiple deep dive sessions during the onboarding phase. This past week I had 2, and they're hour and a half long each, and we really go super deep. What's your USP? What's your, what makes you different? What makes you better in your own words? And then us being the marketers, we pull more out and have the business owner thinking in new ways about how to articulate their unique selling proposition, USP. So yeah, those are just some of my thoughts, Rachel. I know you're listening to calls and you hear similar situations, and yeah, anything you'd add on that?
Yeah, I would just say that I echo everything that you're saying about, having this sort of blanket approach if you're an agency and you would like to scale and you're doing all of the things instead of having one solid focus on an industry. But I just think that as a business owner, that to me is just a red flag. Why would I want to go with, a digital marketing agency that they're doing all the things. They're doing, home inspection, they're doing legal, it doesn't feel very specific or tailored to me or my business. So that to me is kind of, it would definitely throw me off. But I think we're good on this one, unless you had anything else.
No, there's one more thing I want to add on red flag number 4, with this one-size-fits-all strategy. Just to bring it out of the conceptual for a minute, if you're thinking about, okay, well, I get that, it makes sense, but really, what does it mean to have a pest control specific, marketing strategy? Well, I'll tell you, we know through testing that people respond in the pest control industry to same day. They love same day XYZ. They love first-time service offers. They love next day. They love same day, love next day. They typically want you to, have some kind of trust. Part of our onboarding process is we audit all of our clients according to a couple different things. How many years in business? What are the reviews you have? And what are they saying specifically in pest control? So yeah, and I would say also the conversion elements on the page. I mentioned this to you earlier. Where's your form? What does it say in that form? What does the experience look like? What pictures are you showing? These things, again, are more industry specific. Again, I'll emphasize the copywriting, the words on the page matter, and the way you articulate the problems. I mentioned same day as a good example of this. There are others off the top of my head, but just when you're trying to think about this and thinking about what does it really mean to not have a more of a bespoke strategy, it really does mean understanding the words that the people are using in this specific industry versus generically. And unless you're spending all of your time, like us, in one industry like pest control, you don't pick up on those nuances, or at least not as frequently. So those are my final thoughts on this one.
No, it's perfect because it leads us into our 5th and final red flag, which is they don't understand pest control. And it's so funny. I put this one in here because I was listening to a call and this really awesome, super business savvy person or business owner was on this call, and she was she actually really, a lot of these calls inspired me to have this be the first video that we do, but she really kind of drove it home for me with the idea, because she just had been burned before, several times. But she said this thing, and I just want to call it out. She said, well, you don't have to go with a digital marketing agency that, only does pest control to do digital marketing. And it's Shane and I were kind of talking about this offline, and we were just like, well, you don't have to, but man, wouldn't it help? You don't have to eat healthy, But
Yeah.
wouldn't that get you closer to any sort of, fitness goals that you have in mind, right? Why wouldn't it be more effective? So yeah, I'd love to dive into this one and hear your
Yeah.
thoughts.
Yeah, I know we're joking about this one. Yeah, you don't have to do that, but yeah, I guess what it comes down to is I said it before. Like there are certain things that if they apply a one size fits all strategy from red flag number 4, it kind of is a nice segue into they don't understand pest control. Again, this comes down to the copywriting, conversion experiences. It comes down to understanding the seasonality of certain pests in certain geographies. Do your copywriters understand the nuances of pests in specific geographies, and can they bake them into the copywriting, into the blog posts, into email messages, anything? This is all like, unless you have an agency that understands pest control that deeply, you're basically paying the agency to learn about your market, which you don't want to do that. You want to pay them to already know and then pay them to bring insights basically on day 0. Like as soon as you sign on the dotted line, they're bringing insights and making your business better. Other things that if they don't understand pest control, like if they're building a Google Ads campaign, how do they know which negative keywords to use, right? They have to guess. They have to guess because they don't know off the top of their head. They don't have that data. We have a 5,000 negative keyword list that we immediately use for all our campaigns that we've gathered a ton of data. That's through years of testing that we've gathered. We just know which keywords convert. So we negative out the ones that we know don't convert. And we also know which kind of bidding strategies work. So unless, and again, that'll change between the industry. So again, if your agency doesn't understand pest control, they don't understand what conversion elements work, they don't understand the seasonality, you're just paying them to learn, and that's not good. So big red flag that if your agency does not understand pest control and cannot speak the language, they don't understand the business model of pest control, they don't understand that subscriptions are better than one time, and they don't understand that PE firms prefer 80% subscription revenue versus one-time revenue. Like, we know these data points because we go to the conferences and we understand the nuances of the industry. So other agencies don't, because they can't, because they're generic and they don't focus on pest control. So big red flag number 5 would be to make sure they understand pest control as well as you do. Or, yeah, they're probably not going to understand as well as you do, but if they're close, they're dangerous, that's great. But if they're not even if they're really far, then yeah, you're not in a good spot.
Yeah. And I would, I just want to kind of quickly go back to the content writing side of things, because I think that is so insanely valuable. I've overseen blog writers for niche, very specific industries, and I've had to take the amount of time and revisions and feedback, and before I even got it to a client, was such a time waster. And when I heard that the content writers at Pesty go through a course that educates them on pest control, and do you remember how many hours that course
44
was? 44 hours of pest control knowledge of the industry before you even, hit the blogs or start thinking of copywriting is just, I think shows how much you care about hitting the nail on the head and making sure that the content is correct and it's going to rank. How can you write and want to rank for something that you don't know about?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like just to echo, yeah, we teach we hire pest control operators that want to write as to be additional, bring expertise into the building, but also we train, like you just said, we have every one of our writers go through a 44-hour course just to continue to upskill and train and make sure everybody on the team, not only the SEOs and the PPC teams, but also the content teams, and everybody on the team needs to understand pest control. And if your agency doesn't have anything like that, is it like a non-starter? Maybe not. Like maybe they're still a really good agency, but I'm just these little things. Like if you go through our list and the agency you're talking about, 3 out of 5 is probably not a fit. In terms of they hit 3 out of 5 red flags. 5 out of 5, obviously not a good fit. But if it's one, again, it'd be great. We want to work with all pest control marketing companies, pest control companies that are in the US, but we understand that we're not a fit for everybody. But so that the point of this video is not to say you need to work with us, and the only way you're going to get results is if you work with us. It's more so we know you're probably going to work with other people, right? And that's fine. But we want to arm you with knowledge. So that when you go into those conversations, you can make sure you ultimately don't get burned, because there's a lot of people who've gotten burned by agencies before.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. We're here to empower. We're not here to scare you. We're here to equip you with the armor that you need to go into conversations if you're exploring digital marketing. Because if you don't know digital marketing, then that's fine. You're a pest control business owner. You're not supposed to, but these digital marketing agencies may know that, the bad ones that have these red flags, and they might try to take advantage of you, right? So that's the whole point and purpose of today.
Yeah, and if this video helped you, make sure to hit like, it helps the algorithm, helps us sort of reach more pest control companies, subscribe to the channel, and we would love to talk to you. So feel free to book a discovery call if you're interested in, low pressure, kind of more of a just conversation about your business, either with me or someone else on the team. See if we can help you. And if there's a fit, if not, then we'll recommend what we think is best for your business. So anyway, that's all we got for you in this video. My name is Shane, and we got Rachel over here, and it was a really, really good video. So we'll see you in the next one.